I'm Ron Richard, and as President and CEO of the Cleveland Foundation, I have the honor of hosting the Anisfield-Wolf Book Prize ceremony. This event is so special that it's truly my favorite night of the year. 95 years ago, when the Cleveland Foundation opened its doors, we became the world's very first community foundation. Today, we give about $85 million in grants every year to good causes. Our grants help to transform education, create jobs, revitalize neighborhoods, nurture youth, and support the arts. I invite you to partner with us by giving to your favorite causes through the Cleveland Foundation. The Anisfield-Wolf Book Prizes are just one example of our work, but they are a shining example and a source of deep pride for us all. Now, let's return to tonight's presentation of A Story About Stories.
Her name is Annette Gordon-Reed, and she is busy. She has 2 PhDs, one in law, the other in history. She teaches law at NYU and history at Rutgers. She lectures, does extensive, almost forensic research, and writes. Oh, and she's a mother with a family in New York City. You know that's called being an overachiever?
Well, something like that.
How long can you keep up that pace, though?
Well, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, you're young.
We'll see. I'm not so young, but we'll see.
The Hemingses of Monticello is Annette's second book on Sally Hemings. She was a slave woman who had children with Thomas Jefferson. This book won her a Pulitzer Prize this year and her second Anisfield-Wolf Award.
I really wanted to write about an enslaved family as individuals, to have the sort of details of their life form the way people viewed them, instead of having a sort of sociological, a sort of a group identity. I wanted to write their lives from the inside out, the way most other people are seen. You know, what are the things that happen to you, not sort of a generic enslaved family. So it was to personalize the people. I think that we owe them something for surviving and for going forward, putting one foot in front of the other under circumstances that are just unimaginable to me. So to me, it was an honor to be able to do this, to bring this family to people today and have people see them as people.
To dislodge from the amber of history the story of this previously unwritten family. That's what she attempted to do, and that's what so magnificently she has done. Annette tells us more about Sally Hemings than we possibly could have known before, and then goes on to tell us in great detail about her descendants. She tells a remarkable, moving, and singular story, but she never goes beyond the story itself into the realm of fiction. This is what makes this book a great and exemplary history of a family in and a family without slavery. It gives me enormous pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to present Annette Gordon-Reed with the Anisfield-Wolf Book Award for Nonfiction.
Annette Gordon-Reed is hailed as a superb historian by critics and now as an acclaimed storyteller as well. Listen, and you'll hear why that is so.
This is what it had come to. The people who had nursed him from the beginning of his life, whose energies he had harnessed for his own use up until this moment, were now called upon to care for him as he faced his last days on earth, sitting up with him at night, sleeping on pallets around his bed to be ready to hear when he called out in need, in fear, or out of simple loneliness. These African Americans, whom he had sentimentalized as having the best hearts of any people in the world, had given their lives to him, followed him about, cleaned up after him, no doubt worried about him for his sake and their own, slept with him and borne him children. And he had held them as chattel, trying, in the case of the Hemingses, to soften a reality that could never really be made soft. While he claimed to know and respect the quality of their hearts, he could never truly see them as human beings separate from him and his own needs, desires, and fears. In the end, All he really knew of their hearts was what they were willing to show him, and they carried enough knowledge in their heads to know his limitations and the perils of giving too much of themselves in the context of their society. The world they shared twisted and perverted practically everything it touched, made entirely human feelings and connections difficult, suspect, and compromised. What could have been in the hearts of any human beings living under the power of that system was inevitably complicated, inevitably tragic. Thank you.
This very little lady is a giant. Her name is Paul. Paul Marshall has been writing brilliantly for 50 years. That is a lifetime of achievement. Anisfield-Wolf gave her that distinction this year, just the latest in a heralded career. Almost a dozen novels, essays, scrupulous research took her out of Brooklyn to Europe, the Caribbean, South and Central America, Africa. Her latest book is Triangular Road. But it's her friendship with Langston Hughes that Paul cherishes most. It began at a low-cost Harlem book party when her first book, Brown Girl, Brown Stones, was published in 1959.
This was the publication of my first book.
Yes.
That novel, Brown Girl, Brown Stones. We had finally, after much back and forth, many problems and so on, finally gotten it published. And there was going to be a book party. We had no money, so it was in a Harlem storefront. And as the book party got underway, the door opens, and here is the poet laureate of Black America. Come to hear me, this little novice, read. And he acted as if I was a child of his who had done him proud.
Did he ever tell Paul Marshall what he saw and loved about her and her work? Did he ever tell you that?
No, he didn't, but he acted. He acted in a way that informed me in a very deep way that he was supporting me. He would never come out and say anything.
6 years later, Paul joined Langston Hughes and another writer on a tour of Europe sponsored by the U.S. State Department. Now, that was 1965, the height of the civil rights struggle in America. Langston Hughes didn't talk much. He let Paul and Bill Kelly do most of that. However, at a large meeting at Africa House in London, a group of black Brits gave Hughes a hard time because he wasn't as militant, they said, as Stokely Carmichael.
They just didn't understand generations, and this is what Langston points out to them in his response.
He did it angrily.
He did it, yes.
He finally...
Yes,
yes. Not only did he talk, he got angry.
He did get angry, because he had to make them understand that each generation does his or her share. And that he was out there in the hustings when the Scottsboro boys and so on were being railroaded and so on. That it really, in a sense, he needed to, in a sense, be angry enough for them to understand that it's an ongoing struggle.
The Paul Marshall-Langston Hughes friendship was forever cemented.
In recognition of the contribution that her work has made to the understanding of women, of diaspora, of the sheer diversity of human cultures, and ultimately, my friends, to an understanding of the human condition itself. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Marshall.
Oh my.
Instead of focusing on 5 decades of world travel, writing awards, and teaching, this 80-year-old unselfish grande dame chose to recall the Langston Hughes days, her champion, who wrote and called regularly to prod her.
My phone would ring around 11 p.m., and right away I would know it was Mr. Hughes. Night, people. How did it go today, Paulie? He always insisted on adding that feminizing E to my name. My benefactor tried warning me in so many words of the obscurity I might be courting and taking so long to produce so little. He once lost patience with me. Paulie, he cried over the phone, do you realize that I have a book out for every year that you've been alive? I was in my mid-30s at the time. You better get busy, he said. James Mercer Langston Hughes, Mr. Hughes. Decades have passed since his death, and I still miss him. A poem of his speaks to that continuing sense of loss. I loved my friend. He went away from me. There's nothing more to say. The poem ends soft as it began. I loved my friend. Thank you.
And to all 4 of our 2009 honorees, it's just been a stupendous evening. I can assure you we won't forget this night anytime soon. You've touched us and you've truly blessed us with your readings. Thank you so much.
The authors collected their awards, and tonight each is back where they want to be, need to be, and belong. Louise Erdrich back in Minneapolis with her pen and paper, Annette Gordon-Reed in New York City, and Nam Lee in Melbourne, each at a keyboard. And Paul Marshall is back in Richmond, no doubt reviewing her notes in a half-century of being an author. They are back at work, alone, thinking, musing, writing. It is as it should be. The whirlwind in Cleveland is over. Tonight they are celebrities in the silence of their craft. Words written, written well, written very, very well.
Next year will be our 75th anniversary, and we plan to put on the dog. If I were you, I would get your tickets now.